and happy Sunday, and welcome to the deal. I'm your host, Ed Clark. It is Sunday, November 5th, 2023. We're so happy you decided to take some time to join us to talk about all the world's problems and come up with some solutions. As always, Val Atkinson is here. Hey, Val.
Hello, Ed.
Hey, Val. I'm not going to bore everybody with a long introduction or anything like that. I'm going to jump right in because this morning I saw some video of Anthony Blinken, Tony Blinken, over in Palestine, actually meeting with the Palestinians. So let's start with some international news on this edition of the deal. Uh, the conflict started on October 7th. It's not shown any sort of signs that it's going to stop. One of the problems right now is a lot of innocent Palestinians are now being killed. And I know innocent Jewish people were killed. So let's not even go down that road, folks. Just some of your emails I've gotten from you folks don't seem to get it. There's dead innocent people on both sides. So let's start there, Val. But with Anthony Blinken going to actually talk to the Palestinians, that seems to be a sign from the White House that they feel like they need to tamp this down and they can't come across as just being supporters of Israel. What's your read on Anthony Blinken going to talk with the Palestinians?
You hit it right on the head, Ed. That's what they're doing. They're trying to play to the international community, trying to make folks believe that they are good brokers for this conflict. They're honest brokers, but we're not. We are on the side of Israel, and we are going to be on their side, whatever it takes. But he's trying to play that role so that some of our allies, the British, the French, the whomever, and some of the people that we're trying to woo in the Middle East, such as the Saudis and the Egyptians, that we've got to convince them that we are honest brokers and that we can be trusted to come up with a plan, a deal, something that can be worked out for all sides. I think that's going to be a tough sell for Blinken because people are beginning to see that we're giving them billions of dollars per year. We gave them the green light as far as it's retribution. That's the best word I can come up with. What they're doing now is retribution. They are trying to show Hamas and not only Hamas, this is an act, Ed, that they are trying to show the rest of the Middle East and the rest of the world this is what you get when you come and mess with us. It doesn't matter if what promoted you to do something to us was provocated by us. If we're in the right or wrong, that doesn't matter. What matters is if you do anything to us, this is what you're going to get. That's the typical definition of a bully. He doesn't care where you got your lunch money from or what your mama told you to do with that lunch money. He wants it. And he's not going to be satisfied until he gets it. And I don't think Blinken is going to be able to get through all of that. I mean, these Palestinians, they may not be powerful, but they are not getting dumber by the day. They're getting smarter. And the rest of the people in the Middle East are getting smarter. They've seen over the years and decades what we've done, what we tried to do, and what the results have been of our action. They've seen that. They know what kind of player we are. They're not going to have a blind eye set up and let Blinken come over and says, hey, we'll give you this aid and we'll give you this and we'll be on your side in front of the UN when this issue comes up or that. And, those kind of promises that we made to everybody, starting with the Native Americans. I don't think the Middle Easterners are going to go for that. That's why I'm saying, and I take the position that I think it's worthless. He's not going to go over there with a pocket full of money and start throwing spare change around and have those people forget what's been done to them by their proxy, the Israeli government.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about the other piece of this that, getting support from around the world. The Palestinians are seeing people protest in a lot of places, including Durham, North Carolina. Let's look at a clip and then we'll talk about
Having
that.
some major impacts in a busy part of downtown Durham. It's a time of day we usually see a slowdown in traffic anyway, but we are seeing this on State Route 147 at Mangum Street. People are out there right now chanting "Ceasefire now." The group behind this demonstration started gathering at around 4 p.m. Jewish Voice of Peace says they are out there calling for a ceasefire. You are taking a live look now at NC 147. You can see a few cars slowly making their way through, but obviously we have tons of people standing over that bridge there. We have people kind of in some of the lanes there on NC 147. Now, this group that reached out to us telling us they were having this protest says, Israel has been at war for almost a month. Thousands are reported dead. So they began their protest today at CCB Plaza downtown, about a mile away from where this is. You can see they're kind of an overhead look. This is one of the traffic cams in the area. People still blocking parts of Highway 147, again, standing along that bridge and the overhead bridge going over at Mangum Street. Now you can see that we still have some major backup spanning along from Jackie Robinson Drive through Fayetteville Street, and this is a little bit south of downtown Durham. These streets will likely be impacted for the next couple of hours, or at least the next couple of minutes. Lots of people are probably trying to take some of those side roads to find other ways home, so those are likely being impacted at this time. Again, this was happening downtown Durham along State Highway 147. Hundreds of people out there calling for a ceasefire.
So Val, some young people shut down Durham Freeway. And I could go to other cities. I just picked that because we live nearby, right? And so these young people seem to be engaged and on the Palestinian side. And then you hear a lot of corporate backlash saying, we're not going to hire you if you've protested, or we're not going to, be supportive of, your endeavors or whatever if you've been supportive of the Palestinians. Here's the conundrum I find myself in, Val. It is clear that if you go talk to people throughout Africa, Asia, and even in South America, they're going, wait a minute, we support the Palestinian people. And then so we're on this island by ourselves, almost, with the unconditional support. Even you don't have it in Britain, you don't have it in France, you don't have it in Germany. And then so Blinken goes to, Palestine to try to broker something there. But in the meantime, these young people in America in the streets are protesting, and they could throw a monkey wrench into Democratic ambitions to hold on to the White House or gain seats in the Senate or whatever else. Has the Biden administration miscalculated? And if so, can they reverse this? Because I hear an awful lot of young people saying that they're not going to support Biden because of his stance on Israel.
Well, I don't know if this can be reversed. I think he went out too far in the beginning in support of Israel to show the Jewish population here in America and wherever else that he was on the Jewish side, or once America says that we support you, we are a staunch ally, da-da-da-da-da-da. He went so far into that, he can't come back now. I know he's trying to by saying, we need to have if not a ceasefire, a slowdown. Or he's trying to walk it back and say that Palestinian children are human beings too. And Israelis are saying, you kill 1,400 of our people. So now that we've killed 10,000 of yours, half of them children, it's almost even, but we got to still keep killing before it gets even. Biden is caught in the middle. He doesn't know how to tell them to stop. Without our annual contributions of several $billion a year, Israel could not do what she's doing. All it takes from Biden is the word to say, effective midnight on November the 12th, I expect to see a ceasefire. If you don't do it voluntarily, we will help you stop it. That's all he's got to say. He can't do that because the money, the donations from the Jewish community here in America will dry up that he's getting for his campaign, not to mention the votes. And he's afraid to do that. Everybody who is Israeli, a part of the Jewish community, or supporters thereof will be on his case, and he knows that. So he's in a quandary. He
Yeah,
dug that hole, and now he's got to stay in it until this thing is over.
until it's over. I want to remind you, you're listening to or watching The Deal. That's Val Atkinson. I'm Ed Clark. It's Sunday, the 5th of November. We're barreling towards Thanksgiving and Christmas and the holidays. You know, Val, just an aside, I was back in D.C. again, and everywhere I went, they were putting up Christmas decorations. Halloween was barely over. It's Christmas decorations everywhere. And so it's clear that, Christmas is, and it's been like this for a long time, it's turned into a holiday for not the religious reasons, but for financial reasons. So I'll leave that there. We'll talk about that later. But let's wrap up this whole talk about the Israeli-Palestinian conflict here, and again how it spills over into American politics. The new speaker, Mike Johnson, put a proposal on the table and said, "Okay, we'll give you money for Israel, but you got to cut out all the IRS agents." Let's take a look at that clip, and then we'll talk about it.
Republican Mike Johnson, a Trump ally, won unanimous support from his party to become the new leader of the House. And even before taking the oath of office, he vowed to pass a resolution to support Israel as his first act as Speaker.
The first bill that I'm going to bring to this floor in just a little while will be in support of our dear friend Israel, and we're overdue in getting that done. We're going to show not only Israel, but the entire world, that the barbarism of Hamas that we have all seen play out on our television screens is wretched and wrong, and we are going to stand for the good in that conflict.
The resolution passed with overwhelming bipartisan support in the House. It pledges the U.S. to stand by Israel against the, quote, barbaric war launched by Hamas. Nowhere does it mention protecting civilians in Gaza or humanitarian aid or calling on Israel to show any kind of restraint. A competing resolution calling for a ceasefire in Gaza had been introduced earlier by Rashida Tlaib, a Palestinian American who represents Michigan. That resolution got no traction whatsoever. Heidi.
So, Val, the new speaker, let me just, again, this is me talking. This is my show. We don't have a whole bunch of sponsors we have to, acquiesce to. Mike Johnson, he's an asshole.
Yes.
That's my technical assessment of the new speaker. He knows that that's cynical. The Congressional Budget Office even said that if you take away this money that he's talking about taking away, and you don't do enforcement on those scofflaws who are usually at the top end of the earners who are not paying their taxes, the impact will be way more detrimental than any impact that you could have had from saving any money from not funding these IRS agents, right? So you get this constant thing with people like Mike Johnson and the Republicans saying that, oh, they just want to be fiscally responsible. Val, they're the ones that got us in the hole. Can you explain to people, because I know you know, why Donald Trump was worse for the deficit and debt than any other president in American history?
Yeah, because of the big tax cut that he gave to the rich. And we're still paying for that. There's no question about it. But the only reason that guys like Mike Johnson does and says what he does is because immediate past history has shown that it works. He wouldn't have tried to tie tax breaks to the rich by cutting IRS funds to anything if he didn't have an inkling that it works, that we jump into our compromising bag right away. Well, we can't give you all of that you asked for, Speaker Johnson, but what about if we meet you halfway? And we were going to set up $4 billion to increase IRS's chances to collect more money. What about you just leave $2 in there? You see, that's what they are used to. They are used to us coming off of whatever position we had and meeting them halfway. They are adept at this, and they're going to keep doing it, Ed, until we say no. I mean, it's just as simple as that. Until we say no, there will be no compromise.
Yeah. Well, somebody's got to say it. I say it. You say it. We need some people in D.C. to say it. I guess when I'm up there next week, I'll go by and see the speaker and maybe, talk to him about why it's a bad idea for his proposal. Because look, here's the bottom line, Val. There's still no budget, and I know also that most of that is just funny money and fudging, numbers. But the reality is we talked about this before. If there are furloughs and those kind of things, it has a real impact on real people. And that's my problem, is that they're so nonchalant about this stuff, as if it doesn't affect anybody, and that all people who work for the government, I guess, are liberals. I don't know. And they're going to show them, right, by closing it down. They have this mentality that, to be cruel shows power. I mean, because all they talk about all the time is being cruel to people, cutting off benefits, whatever, blah, blah, blah. But I digress. You know what? This is a good time for us to take a break. When we come back, I want to talk about North Carolina redistricting again, Val. We talked about it a little bit the last time, but we took a week off because I was in D.C. working again. But I need to get back to the North Carolina redistricting and how important it is going to be nationally, because you may lose 5 Democratic seats in one fell swoop, 5 or 6 in one fell swoop here in North Carolina, which could be devastating for the Democrats' ability to do anything in the House. So everybody stay right there. We'll be right back after this message.
Having diabetes means there's a lot you need to keep track of. Eating healthy, limiting sugary drinks, getting plenty of physical activity, checking your blood sugar throughout the day, and taking your medication. Oh, and balancing all of your other responsibilities too. Thankfully, there's help. Diabetes Self-Management Education and Support, or DSMES, can help you learn strategies to manage your diabetes so you can live a healthier life.
North Carolina will likely send more Republicans to Congress next year.
This comes as the GOP in the state legislature has redrawn the election lines. There are major changes that completely change the political landscape.
2 draft maps are out, and both of them draw me out of my district and put me in one that's totally unwinnable. If either of these maps become final, it means I'm toast in Congress.
Freshman North Carolina Congressman Jeff Jackson lays out his future on social media. He is one of several Democrats who will either face a hard or impossible road ahead as Jackson's district is expanded into solidly Republican counties. He sees it as so dire, he all but gives a concession speech.
Being able to do this job and share it with you has been the honor of a lifetime, and I'm so grateful to everyone who has followed along.
In one version, Representative Valerie Foushee completely loses Durham County. She says our democracy thrives when its representative bodies are a true reflection of its people, and North Carolina's voting maps should reflect our evenly divided state. Once again, the voters in our great state will be subject to unfair electoral maps that will disenfranchise voters and discourage civic participation.
And welcome back to our second segment of the day. I'm your host, Ed Clark. That's Val Atkinson. It is Sunday, November 5th. 2023. First segment, we were talking about what's going on in the Middle East. Tony Blinken went over to talk with the Palestinians to try to broker some kind of deal to ratchet down the violence. At this point, I think most of it's coming from Israel, Val. They're the ones with the tanks and rolling over people's houses and blowing up hospitals and schools and even churches. And I'm not going to go back into this real deep, but just think about this, folks. All the Palestinians aren't Muslims. There's a goodly number that are Christian, and that hardly gets brought up, but it's true. So keep that in mind. But what I want to talk about in the second segment, Val, is something that's really a subject of a lot of consternation for us We live in North Carolina, and we love North Carolina. I think the both of us would say that it's probably one of the better places that we've lived in our lives, and we've lived a lot of different places. However, the Republicans have managed to take hold of the North Carolina government at the legislative level and at the court level. And what that means is the Supreme Court had told North Carolina, your district suck, listen, got to do better. State Supreme Court said your district suck. You got to do something better. So in 2022 midterms, 7 Democrats won, 7 Republicans won. I still feel like they weren't. If you really did it right, it probably would have been 8-6 Democrats, maybe even 9-5 Democrats. But I'm asking for too much, right? So now we're here, and the North Carolina Supreme Court gets shifted to be a Republican majority, and they say, we'll hear the case again. And which never happens, but it did. And under the North Carolina Constitution, it even says, and here it is right here if you want to see it, it says that the districts are good for 10 years. Now, the only thing that could upset that is if the court says that, they need to be changed, and that's happened before. So we get one election, Val, with the new districts, and the Republicans say, oh, hell no. Oh, hell no. Now we're looking at a possibility of maybe only 3 Democrats, when Democrats far outnumber Republicans in North Carolina. So I say all that to say, what the hell? What can we do? What can be done? What will be done? What's going to happen?
I'll tell you, we're in big trouble. We're in big trouble right now, because when you are depending upon your opponent to make some changes so you can win, you are in trouble. And that's where the Democrats find themselves right now. There's very little that Democrats can do other than try to convince certain people who traditionally vote Republican to change their minds. Because by law, the Republicans have figured out, they were playing chess while we were playing checkers. They figured out that if you could get hold of the legislature, especially around census taking time, and you can be in control when it's time to draw the lines, you can choose your own voters, thereby making sure you're in power, in office forever. Keep choosing your own voters, drawing the lines as you would have them. And that's what they've done. I wrote a piece called Kryptonite is to Superman as gerrymandering is to democracy. And what I meant by that was that you can't have true democracy if you have extreme gerrymandering. It won't work. Those two things don't set horses, people. It can't happen. Gerrymandering is going to have to be done away with. I didn't say altered, tweaked. I said done away with in order for democracy to really work. How did we get here? Why is it that way? It happened on a November night in 2008. I don't know where you were, Ed, but I was in the Hilton in Raleigh celebrating the announced victory of Barack Obama to be the first Black president of the United States of America. And that scared the bejesus out of some folks who happen to be conservative. And they saw that a coalition of liberal and progressive whites with Black and brown voters was almost impossible for them to beat. So something had to be done about it. So they resorted to something called minority rule. You remember that, Ed, in South Africa. Minority rule, and they called it democracy. I ain't never heard of a democracy where the minority rules. But at any rate, that's what they wanted to do. That's what gerrymandering is. Gerrymandering allows the minority to rule over the majority. And they decided that's what they were going to do. They have it in now. And the first thing they did was to make sure they could keep the money straight by bringing in Citizens United. And that allowed to get dark money from any place they wanted in any amount. And they could have that going. Then they concentrated on the courts to make sure that when we made our end run and took our case to the courts, that we would run against their selected judges. So they filled the federal benches with ultra-conservative judges. And then the coup de grace was this court case that they had been looking for that came up, Shelby County versus Holder, where the 1965 Voting Rights Act was in question. And they got it to the Supreme Court. And the Supreme Court said Section 4 of this act is unconstitutional. Section 4B to be precise. And Section 4B is that part of the act that says what are the means that they use to determine who comes under the authority and auspices of the act itself. And Republicans successfully argued before the court that these are means that were set up in 1964 and 65. And states and districts and people have changed since then. So it needs to be changed. So what the court said, well, I will declare this unconstitutional and suggest that the Congress rewrite Section 4B, knowing that that was not going to happen with the Republicans holding one chamber of Congress. So that killed the Voting Rights Act. So now you don't have pre-clearance. So now people like states like North Carolina can rush and put in voter ID, no more Sunday voting, no more early voting, all kinds of measures, no more giving water out while you're standing in line to vote. Before they outlawed Section 4B, they had to send that to DC to get it approved. Now they can just do it, and then you go to court after it's done. So that's what killing the 65 Voting Rights Act did. And that allowed them to do all of the things they wanted to do. Get the conservative legislature, gerrymander districts, get more conservatives on the court, keep pouring in dark money and that sort of thing. And the Democrats are wondering what happened.
Yeah.
Their heads are spinning around right now,
yeah,
not knowing what happened.
Well, I want to remind you, you're listening to or watching The Deal. That's Val Atkinson giving us a history lesson on how we got here with Republicans in a minority in places like North Carolina, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, but having control over the legislatures. Here's the other piece of it, Val. The other cynical thing they've been doing here in North Carolina is trying to strip the governor of power. And they're going to stuff like he can't appoint people to commissions, like a commission that would economic development commission or a commission that would control rates or whatever on insurance, whatever, right? Anything the governor can do, and the governor basically is just a figurehead as long as they're in office, right? And the governor's Democrat, because they know that a lot of times in North Carolina, in Wisconsin, in Michigan, that statewide, you can get a governor that's a Democrat. It's real easy because most people are Democrats, but they can't win the legislature. So you got to stop the governor from being able to veto stuff. You got to stop the governor from being able to, again, appoint people on commissions. And like the Republicans have basically taken over all the casino stuff in North Carolina, right? They don't want anybody looking into all the shenanigans they've been doing to approve casinos, not for Native American groups, but this casino group that's out of Las Vegas that has nothing to do with Native Americans, but they don't want anybody to know. They don't want, Berger doesn't want transparency, Moore doesn't want transparency. So they figure they can do that if the governor can't appoint people. So here's the last question on this, Val. If there's no way to unseat these people, And young people are talking about, like we talked about in the first segment, about not supporting Democrats over something like Israel. Uh, they're not looking at what's right in front of them. The reason why their lives are so hard, these young people's lives are so hard, is because you're now going to have a legislature who's going to outlaw probably anything to do with, well, we already got rid of affirmative action at the University of North Carolina and every other college. There are court cases right now that will prevent venture funds from setting aside money specifically for African Americans because they say that's discriminatory. They've made it so that you can't even imagine trying to get into Harvard or somewhere like that. And we know that if you get into one of those schools, that's almost a ticket to $100,000 a year job by the time you graduate from college. So, what are we going to do to tell people exactly how bad this is? Is there any long shot that you can get enough people to come out to unseat some of these people, so at least it won't be such a super majority, but maybe keep them from doing any more damage? Is there any way possible, or are we going to die old men saying, "Well, damn, back in 2023 when they had a chance, they didn't do it"? Well, how's this going to end, Val?
I'm going to break one of my own rules here, and I'm going to answer that question with a question. And ask, first of all, who are we talking about? Who are we talking to? Are we talking to young Black folks and more y'all need to go to the poll? Are we talking to young white people saying, hey, you need to go to the poll? Are we talking to middle-aged and elderly white folks saying, you need to change your mind and stop voting for who you normally vote for and give this a chance? I think some of the strategies and some of the pronouncements are too confusing because we haven't decided who we're talking to. If once we decide who our message is aimed towards, then we can sort of tailor it and refine it to the point that it has a better chance of success. We're just throwing things out there about right now. When we talk about, well, what can we do to motivate these people to come out to vote? I ain't on that side because I know that in North Carolina, African Americans only make up 20% of the electorate. And all 20 of us can come out. And if it isn't some kind of balance between the other 80%, our vote doesn't matter. 20 can't beat 80. They ain't gonna gerrymander it like that, okay? So what we've got to do, in my opinion, is target things after to make sure that the 20% has a chance to sway the election. And the only way the 20% can have an impact on the election is that the 80% is not necessarily evenly divided, but divided enough so that the 20% can have an impact. I think we need to be spending more time toward that. Now, and at the same time, once we get that going, then we can say, okay, let's outvote them. And somebody may say, well, how can you outvote them when you got 20 and they got 80? I'm talking about the percentage of turnout. Make sure that we are high in the turnout percentages like we were in 2012. Here in North Carolina, we turned out a higher percentage of the eligible Black voter than a eligible portion of the white voter did. We turned out a higher percentage of our vote, not a higher number, but a higher percentage of those that were registered. So that's one of the clarity. One of the things that we've got to do is to really decide who we're talking to. And I don't want to racialize this thing and say that Becky Bink needs to talk to white people and Val and Ed needs to talk to Black people. No, Ed and Val can talk to who they want to. And Becky can talk to who she wants to, okay? But make sure we know who we're talking to and why. That will help us say what we really need to say to get them to consider doing what we ask them to do.
Yeah, that's a good point. Look, I hear some music in the background. That means we need to take a break. On the way out, you're going to see a clip about the new North Carolina districts, and you should be. I don't care where you live, because we got people from all over the country and all over the world that watch and listen. You should be concerned about minority rule. It never ends well. Anyway, so stay right there. We'll be right back after this message.
I'm feeling it.
The fight over the House speakership is an example of why Republicans want to take this opportunity while they have it, says Catawba College political scientist Michael Bitzer.
Republicans need as many seats as they can to have a cushion in order to build their majority.
One of the most watched races in the country in 2020 was between Democrat Wiley Nickel and Republican Bo Hines. Nickel won, but with a map that was redrawn by court order. Nickel's new Central North Carolina district may prove to be even more challenging. But as we've seen before, there is always the possibility of lawsuits.
We've seen the U.S. Supreme Court uphold challenges, particularly out of Alabama. How much does race come into the factor in drawing these districts? I think that that's where the potential litigation might be battled over.
And welcome back to our third and final segment of the deal. I'm your host, Ed Clark. That's Val Atkinson. It's Sunday, November 5th. We've been chopping up about a lot of stuff. You know, we started out, Val, talking about what's going on in the Middle East. I do want to remind people, though, that, you know, that the Middle East conflict is a big deal. It's nothing to sneeze at. However, there are people dying all around the world all the time. And Americans have a way of tricking themselves into believing only stuff that's important is what's important to Americans, right? So where I want to start out in this segment is a certain segment of Americans who think what they believe religiously is important to everybody else in the world, and that's the Christian right. And a lot of our policy towards Israel, if you listen to like the new speaker, he says, well, I'm a Christian and blah, 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 and that's why we need to support Israel. No, that should not be the reason. It should be that we support efforts and causes because we claim to be a democratic country that supports democracy around the world or whatever, blah, 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 but we don't. We bought into the Christian rights position that America is a Christian country, which it is not. The Constitution is clear about that there would be no religious test for stuff, and the government would not favor one religion over another. But Mike Johnson, the new speaker, Val, makes no apologies about being a right-wing Christian, and he spent most of his career as a constitutional lawyer, and I use that term loosely, as a constitutional lawyer filing lawsuits, against gay marriage, being against anything where people should be left alone to make their own decisions over abortion issues or whatever else, right? So here's the long way to the question, Val. The Christian right, as people stop going to church, because you look at the numbers, people less and less going to church, less and less saying that they're Christians and believe in Christianity. That's a subject for another show. But as there's less of those people, Mike Johnson is the speaker. It seems they get more power. It's back to this whole minority rule thing, is how have the Christian right managed to get in control? Is it just a matter of them latching themselves onto the Republicans and the Republicans doing all the shenanigans we talked about in the second segment? What's the deal with the Christian right? And when is it going to be that they won't have as much power as they have now?
Well, it's the drum major effect. What I call it, the drum major effect, Ed, where the drum major finds a successful parade and then he runs and gets out front of it and calls himself the leader. And it ain't the Christian right. It's the leadership in Republican Party saying, what do we got to do, or what do we got to say and pretend to be doing to get this big group over here to go out and vote for us and send us their money? And these are the things that they like. They are Christians, they are evangelicals, they believe in this, that, and the other. So we've got to do something to show that group that we are the people that they should be supporting. And that's how Republicans got married up with the Christian right. Most Republicans don't even go to church. A lot of those are in power, in office, and that sort of thing. It has no tying in of that whole process. They're just in the business of getting votes, getting money, and getting support. And they found a niche. They said, we can get the evangelical right to come on our side more so than be with the godless Democrats. But the Democrats are agnostic and atheists and don't mind telling you they are. So let's go get this group out here. Let's walk in with the Bible, hold it upside down if we need to. But let's just have our pictures taken with the Bible, So that's the marriage between the Christian right and conservative Republicans. It's a bad marriage at best. And it doesn't matter what they do, the Christian right still stands with them because they know when the rubber really meets the road, when it comes down to a decision like Dobbs v. Jackson case, those evangelicals out there have a good idea where conservatives are going to come down, whether that conservative be in the House, in the Senate, or sitting on the Supreme Court. That's why they support Republicans, and that's why Republicans support them. It's a convenience kind of thing. And nobody's fooled by this except a few of us Democrats. And some of the Democratic office holders are stupid enough to think, well, maybe I can put this in my platform or make this one of my planks in my platform to talk about how much I love Jesus or whatever. And maybe I can get some of those right-wing evangelical votes. He doesn't understand what's going on.
That ain't going to happen.
It ain't going to happen. It's not going to happen, but they keep doing that. To take a picture of me walking up the church steps and doing my Sunday school class. Maybe I can get some votes like that. You're missing the boat so badly.
Yeah.
It ain't about that.
Yeah. So if you're listening, this is The Deal. That's Val Atkinson. I'm Ed Clark. We're in the final little portion of the show here, Val. And as I hear you talk about the Christian right, one of the other things that it made me think about is the Republicans got a debate coming up, as it were. And the most Christian of the Christian right, we hadn't talked about this, was Mike Pence. Mike Pence couldn't get no support. He hovered around 1 or 2% all the time if you look at the polls, and now he's out of the race. And guess who's still number one? We haven't mentioned his name in 50 minutes of the show. We got 5 more minutes to go. We went 55 minutes and didn't mention the elephant in the room, Donald Trump, the orange elephant in the room, as it were. Donald Trump. He is still the front runner. Now, I did see Ron DeSantis on a lot of programs this week. I saw Chris Christie on a lot of programs this week. Didn't see Nikki Haley, didn't see Tim Scott, any of those. So why, I know it's a dumb question, why is Donald Trump still in the lead then? Because his sons were in court this week testifying in his civil trial with the state of New York. We've talked about the 4 or 5 guilty pleas already down in Georgia. We've talked about the renewal of the gag order. I think the last time we were on, in the federal case. But this guy is still in the lead and still in the lead among evangelical, so-called evangelical Christians. How does that match up?
Yeah, everybody knows that he has the best chance of winning of any of those people. They look at the 70-some million votes he got the last time, and they don't think there's anybody on that stage could get that many votes or more. It's a matter of math. They think he's our best shot. A lot of folks hate his guts. A lot of folks think he's probably the worst guy in the world that could be president, but he gives them the best chance of winning. And that's what they want to do. Because you got to remember, and we can go back to what we talked about in gerrymandering in the last segment. We talked about people on the right, on the far right side, being afraid of the coalition of liberal whites and black and brown people. I think that's something to keep in mind because they'll go a long way to keep that coalition from being successful. They think they lose, and they lose horribly if that coalition is in charge. They saw it for 8 years under Barack Obama. They don't like it, okay? So they'll do whatever is necessary, including supporting Donald Trump. And that's what Donald Trump is to them, is to keeping that coalition out of the White House, out of power. It's just like some of our voters who think Joe Biden is too old, he's incompetent, he compromises too much, but they'll be the first one to the poll to vote for him because it's not a vote for him, it's a vote against Donald Trump.
Yeah. And that's whole, like you said, the minority rule. I'm going to start using it. If I have to pay you a fee, I will, because I think it speaks to where we are. The last thing about that before we run out of time is this Senator Tommy Tuberville. Let's take a look at this and we'll talk about it.
I will keep my hold in place until the Pentagon follows the law or the Democrats change the law. Every day this continues is a day that Democrats think abortion is more important than the nomination and our military.
You've just denied this lady a promotion. You did that. She had nothing to do with this policy.
An abuse of the powers we have as senators to say if there's something we vehemently disagree with, that we're going to use that power to hold up the promotion of over 350 men and women in our military.
I am unapologetically pro-life in conviction and in deed, and to hold responsible, effectively, 300 nominated patriots, and by extension to undermine the safety and security of the American people during this perilous time just doesn't make any sense to me.
My hold is not affecting readiness. If senators want to vote on these nominees one by one, I'm all in. I'm happy to do that.
So Val, even Republicans are starting to get pissed off at Tommy Tuberville. When I was in D.C. this week, I ran into a whole bunch of new flag officers, one-star, so some admirals, very, very new minted admirals and Marine Corps generals in training. And you know, I didn't speak it to them about any of this, but you know, I just was looking at the class there, and you have to have people in charge of the military, and Tuberville's been holding it up. And the world does not get any safer if we don't have those people in place. You were in the military, you know how important having, you know, the right flag officers in charge, in place, or whatever. Are people sick enough of Tommy Tuberville that they're just going to start just ignoring him and go on and get these nominations approved? Or is there more havoc to be reaped by Tommy Tuberville?
More havoc to be reaped. I look at guys like Lindsey Graham. I listened to his speech on this subject, and it sounds that he really hates, abhors what Tuberville is doing, and try to show all of the reason why it's horrible for the military and da-da-da-da-da. You could put a vote right in front of Lindsey Graham right now and say, vote up or down, yes or no, do you want to get rid of the filibuster? Well, I don't know if we need to go that far. I'm just talking, you know, there's your answer. These guys get up and they sing that song, but they want somebody else to do the heavy lifting. They are not going, all they got to do is get rid of the filibuster. And Tuberville's power goes away. It goes away. It's another piece, and I'm glad you brought that up, Ed. It's the other piece or the other side of minority rule. In the U.S. Senate, you need 60 votes to win anything. I thought that 51, was good enough. But in the U.S. Senate, 41 beats 59. Because if you can't get 60 votes, you can't win. All I need to do is get 41 votes. I can stop you from doing anything. You can't do a thing if I only got 41. That's minority rule. And it needs to be stopped.
It does. Well, that's a good place for us to stop. So as always, when you're on, Val, I ask you what's coming up in the week, anything we need to know about, anything you want to say?
Still writing on the second edition of my second book called Distraction. I'm liking it more and more as I write and research it. The spring is still my target time frame, and I can't wait. I'm looking forward to this.
Well, good deal. I'm looking forward to it as well. And folks, make sure you pick that up and any other Val's books. Just look them up on Amazon or any place where you buy your literature, Val Atkinson. And you can pick up his past work and definitely be waiting for the newest thing. But I don't have anything else, Val, because I can't save the world this week. So I'm going to have to put it off until next time. So everybody, go out and do something good for somebody today, and I really do mean that, and come back with us next time for another edition of The Deal. Have a good Sunday.